What's going on, everybody? My name is Greg Peters. You are tuned into the Car Passion channel, and I hope you guys are not getting bored with these videos yet, because I'm here to knock out another phase on the VVT engine. Today I'm going to be sealing up pretty much everything on the front, the water pump, cam gears, timing belt, and getting to the valve cover as well. Now I know this video is going to be pretty basic, but a lot of you out there probably have never even done a timing belt job or a water pump or anything like that, and this video could even help you accomplish that task while the engine is in your car. And I also told you that I was going to film every single thing I did to this from the bare block until I'm ready to drop the engine in the car, wire it up, and get it started. So here we are bolting some more stuff on. If you're new, don't forget to hit that subscribe button down below, and what do you say we get started? My first step here is to install the camshaft seals. Now usually the left and right are identical unless you have an 01 to 05 VVT engine. In that case, the VVT side seal is much larger. When I install cam seals, I like to cheat a little bit and loosen up this front cap here. That way the seal just slides right on by hand. I retorque this cap and we're all good to go. Now, this freaked me out a little bit at first. This is the exhaust side. You see how the cam is actually mated up to the cam seal? Well, you come over to the intake side and you're like, what the heck, did I get the wrong seal? The cam doesn't even touch the cam seal. There's a huge gap in there. But when I looked at my cam gear, this ring right here actually slides inside of the seal, and then that's the sealing surface. So that's how it's supposed to look right there. There's just a big old gap in there. Now I want to install my timing back plate, but before I do that, I've got to install my front water neck. But I'm going to be running a coolant reroute, so I don't need the front water neck. And instead of doing the traditional style where I just pull this housing off and run a block plate, I'm actually going to run a block plate all the way back on the head. So I bought this little plate that just bolts right into place here and serves as a complete block off. But I still needed to feed my turbo water, so I had one of my friends weld up this AN6 fitting into my block plate. Now I don't want to get too much into the turbo water and oil lines in this video because that's going to be a complete video on its own, but I just had to show you guys this plate before I put it on because I do have to install it before I put that timing cover on. Make sure both mating surfaces are as clean as possible, and I'm not going to run a gasket. I'm actually going to do RTV. You don't need to lay a ton down because there's no groove for it to go into. You're just mating two flat surfaces. You just need enough to where it's going to seal up properly. Another little bit of customization that I had to do is, since this plate is not quite as thick as the factory front water neck housing, I had to cut the factory bolts. Now you could find new bolts that are shorter. I just decided to cut the existing ones because it was pretty easy. What was happening is the bolts were bottoming out in the head and it wouldn't make this plate all the way tight. So it's just something you have to watch out for when you're swapping out parts like this.
When a man, you may say, well, what do I mean, sick? If a man has forgotten his name, he's a sick man. They call that amnesia.
Timing belt backplate is on, and there's our sneaky little turbo water feed. Next up is the water pump, and although it seems like a very simple part, there are a couple different kinds you can buy, and this is really the one that is preferred in the Miata community. This is made by Gates, and it's actually got a cast impeller, which supposedly has some better flow characteristics or something like that. But the other style just has a really cheap stamped steel impeller, and it is less expensive, but you only do a water pump every 60,000 miles or so. So to me, this one's worth it. It is a Gates 42134. I'm not really sure the cheapest place to get this pump, but I got mine from 949 Racing. I think they're about 40 bucks. Don't forget your gasket. Can really only go one way. Now I'll install the cam gears, and I'm going to show you one of the most common mistakes that people make when they're putting their cam gears on after having their cams out for whatever reason, or they're doing a timing belt or something like that. If you've done your research, you know the E on the exhaust cam gear is supposed to face 12 o'clock or straight upwards. So you go to put your gear on. Look at that, the E is facing up and you're well on your way to finishing your timing belt job. But you go to turn the key and all the engine does is not start and make a bunch of weird puffing sounds because you have installed this incorrectly. Not only does the E have to face upwards, but this nub on the cam also has to face upwards. As you can see, there are actually 3 different ways to install the cam gear. Just because the E on the cam gear is facing up doesn't mean the cam is timed correctly or, you know, facing the right direction. So I'm gonna rotate this cam manually until the nub is at the 12 o'clock position on both cams. Then I know I can install my cam gears the proper direction. Nubs might not end up perfectly at 12 o'clock due to the preloading of the valve springs, but you just want to get it kind of close so you know you're putting the gear itself on correctly. We'll worry about the fine tuning once we get to the timing belt. Another thing to pay attention to, which I don't have to worry about because I'm running stock cams, if you have high lift cams to where you've turned the Miata engine into an interference engine, which means the valves could potentially hit the pistons, you want to make sure your crank is not at top dead center. You notice where the Woodruff key goes there, it's kind of off. That makes sure that the pistons in the block are slightly lowered, so there's no way as I'm rotating these cams that a valve is going to come in contact with the piston. If you have a 1.6 or an earlier 1.8, the intake cam gear installation is the same exact process. If you have a VVT engine, it's still pretty much the exact same process. I kind of lied to you though. The VVT cam gear can only go on one way. So you slide it in and click.
This is a Chuki production.
And the next part's a little tricky, and I'm gonna try to remember exactly how I did it on my 1.6 as far as installing the super damper. Since it's not 2-piece like the stock one is, it's all 1 piece, you kind of have to do things in a certain order. And I think what that order is you have to chill the timing belt just like this, so it's just kind of sitting down here in the bottom. And then you install your lower timing cover, and then put the crank pulley on last, I think. I'm gonna try it and see what happens. Before I install my damper, I kind of want to talk about the trigger wheel setup. I've got a Fab 9 Tuning 36-2 trigger wheel, and the 2 means there are 2 teeth missing, you can see right there, and that gap has got to face a certain direction in relation to the crankshaft. So let's say this pulley is on the crankshaft and you're at top dead center. You can see your Woodruff key cut out, that's top dead center right there. According to the Flying Miata instructions for installing a 36-2 trigger wheel, you want those missing teeth to be just past the 9 o'clock position, so almost between 9 and 10 kinda. So I'm gonna flip this over and see how close the threaded holes are, and we're almost right on. It is possible to install this upside down, and you will be a few degrees off on where those teeth are supposed to be. You don't wanna do that, so check out flyingmiata.com for those instructions on how to install your trigger wheel. And I did have to go to a thin belt guide in order to fit the trigger wheel on there. I used to have a thick belt guide when I ran it on my 1.6 because they have no trigger wheel, but I had to buy the thin belt guide. And I also got my ATI damper rebuilt by ATI. So this is a fresh rebuild. I did have to beat it up quite a bit to get it off of my 1.6 crank. So I wanted to send it in for a rebuild, and they actually have a new spec on their hub size, so they were able to machine this out a couple thousandths, which makes it a tiny bit easier to install. So I'm optimistic that this thing's going to be easy to put on. Once your trigger wheel is on, you can drop on the belt guide, line up the bolt holes, and just put in your little Allen bolts with a little bit of blue Loctite. Then just drop the back plate on, and you're ready to install the pulley. And if you're looking to purchase an ATI damper for your build, at least from my research, the cheapest place I've been able to find them is fab9tuning.com. That's where I bought this, and I haven't been able to find them as cheap anywhere else. Don't forget your woodruff key when you're putting your pulley on. That is going to make sure it's facing the right direction. Once I've put it on by hand, just gonna give it a couple light taps here, the mallet, kind of get it seated, get it in place, and then put my crank bolt in. Make sure you have quite a few threads, and then I'm just gonna tighten that down, and it's gonna pull the damper right onto the crank nose. Of course, you'll notice if you just try to tighten this bolt, you're gonna be turning the crankshaft, but I have a trick that I'm gonna try to see if I can hold it in place. So we're here at the back of the engine, and I happen to have some flywheel bolts that I'm not gonna be reusing, so I'm gonna thread these into the crank. It's kinda hard to tell what I got going on back there, but I got 2 flywheel bolts threaded into the crank and a pry bar in between those bolts, and the pry bar is resting on the engine stand, stopping the crankshaft from spinning as I tighten this front bolt. Now I will put the crank at top dead center, and I'm going to line that up. The TDC mark on the pulley is lined up with the T mark on the timing cover, and you'll use that as a reference point when you're setting up your timing belt. Now, starting from scratch, I'm going to set up the timing belt on the engine. So just like I showed in the last clip, your crank is at top dead center. Your exhaust cam gear is also at top dead center, and you've got a timing mark on the gear, which lines up with the timing mark on your cover. Normally on this gear you'd have an eye, and it would be facing upwards. The VVT cam gear does not have an eye, but it does have a little tick mark on the cam gear that is going to line up with your E timing mark on the back plate. And for now, the cams don't have to be perfect, you just want them to be close. The first thing I do is time the crankshaft to the exhaust cam. So I'm just gonna pull my belt nice and tight, like this, and with the crank at top dead center and the exhaust cam at top dead center and your belt in place, you should have almost no slack in between the crank and the cam. If you're a tooth off, it'll look like this. See all that slack? Too much slack. So I'm gonna pull it 1 tooth tighter, just like this. Basically no slack at all. And I'm gonna throw a zip tie on the belt right here. Now, those aren't going anywhere, but the tricky part is getting the intake cam into the whole mix of things and keeping everything good. You would think this is all locked into place and you could just wrap the belt around the intake cam gear, but what you have to be kind of careful of is if the belt slips on the crank, then you'll be a tooth off again, so you gotta start from scratch. Now I'll put a wrench on my intake cam, and from top dead center, I'm gonna turn my intake cam gear just a hair clockwise. We're talking barely. I put the belt on. Since I've turned this gear clockwise, there is gonna be some slack in between here, okay? But just hold on for now. Because once I turn the cam back to top dead center, all that slack that I had in between the gears just transferred to the belt here, and I'm gonna be able to pull it around the tensioner. Like that. Now, I think I should be good, but there's a couple of checks I need to do to make sure. On any NA or NB Miata engine, except for the VVT version, you would have a vertical tick mark on the intake cam gear. So the VVT engine doesn't have it, but what I've done is draw one there, so now this is a universal timing belt setup for any Miata engine. The first thing you have to do is make sure the intake and exhaust cams are timed correctly to each other. And that's done by counting the teeth between the timing marks on the cam gears. From the exhaust cam, the first tooth you're gonna count is this one right here. That's your timing mark, that's the first tooth on the belt you're gonna count. As you go across, you're gonna count 19 teeth that should be in between this mark and the one on the intake cam gear. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. That should be your 19th tooth right there, just inside your timing mark. Now you know the intake and exhaust cams are timed to each other, but you're not quite done yet. On the exhaust cam, you have another timing mark right there on that tooth, and it's got to line up with the indented line on the timing back plate. Over on the intake cam, you've got a little timing tick mark on that gear. It's gonna line up with the indentation on the back plate. With all of those marks lining up, you know both cams are also at top dead center. Check to make sure your crank is still at top dead center. And one last thing, make sure there's plenty of tension between the exhaust cam and the crankshaft. The engine spins clockwise and it's pulling the belt from this side, so simulating that the engine is running, the most tension is going to be here. Now let me go back a step and show you how to install that spring. So this little rubber OEM piece just slides over it. Stick it on the tensioner and then hold onto it for dear life with some pliers. There you go. Once everything's assembled and the timing marks all line up, turn your engine over 2 times clockwise. Torque down the tensioner. Turn it over again. And then your belt deflection, I think is supposed to be around like 10 millimeters or something like that. About like that. That's good. And your timing belt's done. In case you guys are wondering why my timing belt is blue instead of the OEM black, this is actually pretty much the racing version of the OEM belt. It's a Kevlar racing blue belt by Gates, and it's not really necessary, I guess, but it's a better belt than stock. I think it's about 20 bucks more, and to me it's totally worth the upgrade, just from a safety standpoint, if anything. One last thing I've got to bolt on before the valve cover goes into place is this rear cap that goes on the back of the head. Now, if you have an earlier 1.8, this is where your cast will go, but the VVT engine does not have the conventional cast like the older engines do, so it's actually just got a little blanking plate like this. Look at that fresh wrinkle black paint job. I think I'm gonna do the lettering red. What do you guys think? Red lettering? I think it'll look pretty mean. Alright guys, well that's where I'm gonna end today's video. I hope you learned something. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to drop a thumbs up. Let me know what you thought down in the comments below, and I will see you in the next one. Peace out.
Back from the dead.